There have been about 200 military conflicts in Europe in the last 175 years. Do you know what is unusual about that? Only one country has stayed on the sidelines and not participated in any of them. Let's take a closer look. Fall of 1941. Hitler and his allies have occupied most of Europe. But in the midst of this sea of fascist control, there remains one small, untouched island, Switzerland. This country was not involved in any of the world wars. Today, Switzerland is still outside NATO, the European Union, and joined the UN later than North Korea, only in 2002. In fact, Switzerland has not been involved in military conflicts since the time of Napoleon. However, every man is required to serve in the army, weapons can be purchased without a license, and there are so many bunkers in the country that in the event of the apocalypse, there is a shelter for every resident. So, how did a small country manage to create a real military and economic fortress? And its citizens are among the richest, happiest, and most responsible people on the planet. The average salary in Switzerland is $7,293 per month, or about $6,000 after taxes. Switzerland also tops many rankings: the Global Index of Innovation, Prosperity, Economic Freedom, Happiness, and Best Countries to Live in. It is always at the top. What are the reasons for this success? Actually, there is no single reason. Let's break it down. What do you associate with Switzerland? Mountains, alpine pastures, happy cows, delicious milk, and the famous Swiss cheese and chocolate. That's right. All of these are produced with a quality that rivals the grandeur of the local mountains. However, on an economic scale, these goods represent less than 1% of the economy. Okay, what about Swiss watches? They are certainly one of the country's calling cards. Every year, Swiss companies export $25 billion worth of watches, or about 16 million pieces. That's already 7% of all Swiss exports. But even that is only a small part of the economy. So what does it depend on? The answer is international standing in gold. Switzerland is one of the world's largest gold traders. In 2021, for example, the country exported $86 billion worth of the precious metal. But here's the interesting thing. Gold is not mined in Switzerland. It comes from abroad. In the same 2021 for $83 billion. What kind of business is that? The main buyers of Swiss gold are large countries: India, China, the United States, Germany, and the United Kingdom. And the suppliers? In addition to the same US and UK, the list includes the United Arab Emirates, as well as low-income and high-crime countries such as Burkina Faso, South Africa, Peru, Ghana, Liberia, Suriname, Côte d'Ivoire, and others. Gold enters Switzerland in the form of unprocessed ore and leaves the country in the form of pure gold bars. It is noteworthy that most of the suppliers are countries with unstable economic situations and non-transparent mining methods. Interesting fact, Switzerland refines about 70% of the world's gold. This process is called affinage, from the French affiner to refine. So the Swiss literally and figuratively purify the world's gold, giving it their own brand of quality before sending it to buyers. Of course, it is foolish to assume that this quiet and beautiful country is exclusively engaged in laundering dirty gold. That is an exaggeration. However, there is a possibility that some of the gold is being mined unethically. For example, in March 2022, Switzerland imposed sanctions and stopped buying Russian gold. But shortly thereafter, gold imports from the United Arab Emirates, which did not impose sanctions on Russia, began to grow suspiciously. Here is what a Swiss lawyer, author of a book on gold laundering, says on the subject. Refiners in Switzerland do not buy gold directly. They simply provide a service to clean it. For example, if Russian gold passes through Switzerland on its way to India, it is simply refined and no one checks its origin. There is no supervision or control in such cases. This is a perfect example of Switzerland's unique neutral status, which benefits everyone. For the big players, Swiss refined gold is a symbol of stability and versatility. For smaller countries like Burkina Faso, it is almost a lifesaver, as their economies are heavily dependent on gold exports. Switzerland's history of neutrality has not always been spotless. In 1996, the Swiss National Bank officially acknowledged that the country had profited from trading with the German Reichsbank during World War II. Switzerland bought not only official German assets, but also gold confiscated from other countries such as Belgium and the Netherlands, as well as from Jews and other victims of the Holocaust. What it means. By the end of 1941, Germany was at war with virtually the entire world, and after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States declared war as well. This meant that neither British pounds nor American dollars could be used to pay for resources. The only international currency left in circulation was the Swiss franc. To obtain it, Germany had to trade with Switzerland using looted assets. In addition, Switzerland had already opened a credit line to Germany in 1940 for 150 million francs. By the summer of 1941, the amount had grown to 850 million francs, and over the course of the war, Germany received 2.3 billion francs from Switzerland. Two questions. Why would neutral Switzerland trade with the world's main aggressor? The answer is simple. Look at the country's situation at the time. After the occupation of France, Switzerland was surrounded. It had a choice, either prepare for defense or negotiate through trade. By the way, Switzerland acted reasonably and combined both approaches, defense and cooperation. Now the question is, why did Hitler himself need to trade and negotiate with Switzerland when he could have simply invaded it like France or Austria? In fact, there was a plan to invade. It was called Operation Tannenbaum. In response, the Swiss prepared a defensive plan called Operation Redoubt, but instead of war, profit won. What is Switzerland? It's a mountainous country. Although most of its population lives on the plains, the rest of its territory is the inaccessible Alps. The Swiss have turned them into the largest and most impregnable fortress in Europe. All roads and bridges were mined, numerous bunkers and evacuation shelters were built, and artillery was placed on the mountain passes. Here are the three main citadels. Saint Maurice protects the routes on the French side, Saint Gothard controls the Alpine pass to Italy, and Zargen covers the eastern direction, Austria and Germany. These cliffs were literally turned into cheeses with holes in them that housed arsenals, hospitals, supply depots, and tens of thousands of soldiers. In total, Switzerland mobilized 430,000 soldiers and could increase the number to 800,000 if necessary. Let me remind you that the population of Switzerland at that time was only 4.5 million. The essence of the Redoubt plan was to make the conquest of the country as difficult and expensive as possible. The Swiss said, "We will blow up bridges and roads. Even if you take the plain and capture our financial and industrial centers, Zurich, Geneva, Bern, Lausanne, we will retreat to the mountains and attack you from there." Germany calculated the possible costs and decided that it was more profitable to leave Switzerland in its neutral status than to try to conquer it. First, Switzerland had money that was accepted everywhere. During World War II, the Germans sold 1.3 billion francs worth of gold to Swiss banks. Second, Switzerland had one of the most developed industries in Europe. After the armistice was signed, the country partially demobilized and men returned to the factories to bolster the economy and supply goods, including Oerlikon anti-aircraft guns. Third, the Nazi leaders themselves opened Swiss bank accounts. However, Swiss banks known for their reliability do not disclose the names of the owners of these accounts or how they are being used today. Switzerland has another important advantage, its unique geographic location. It has excellent roads, both ordinary and railroad, which during World War II provided free transit for both Italian and German goods. The logical question is, why does Switzerland have such a unique status that everyone cooperates with it and no one has attacked it for more than 200 years since the time of Napoleon? Let's look at the map again. Switzerland is in the middle of Europe. After Napoleon was defeated, the European powers met at the Congress of Vienna to redraw the map of Europe. At that time, Switzerland was incredibly lucky. The great powers decided that there should be a neutral buffer state in the center of Europe that would control the main Alpine passes. This ensured that no one else would fight over these territories and that the European powers would not have to send armies into the mountains. Why was Switzerland chosen? Because it was already a unique example of political structure. It consists of 26 cantons and half-cantons, which can be compared to the American states, but with an even greater degree of autonomy. Each canton has its own laws and regulations. To this day, Switzerland does not have an official capital. Bern, where the federal parliament is located, is not legally the capital, as cities such as Zurich, Lausanne, or Geneva are not inferior to it. The logic is simple. We have a union of sovereign cantons that have voluntarily agreed to be together under the name of Switzerland. They promise to maintain perpetual neutrality. Failure to recognize such a union would set off a new series of conflicts in which France would try to poach French-speaking inhabitants, Germany would try to poach its own, and Italy would try to poach its own. Instead, Switzerland has become a neutral ground, like a referee on a soccer field, essential to the stability of a constantly warring world. Switzerland is an example of an amazing combination of tradition and innovation. Today, the country has become a base for a large number of international organizations. For example, the International Red Cross was established in Geneva in 1863, and in the 20th century, Lausanne hosted the headquarters of the International Olympic Committee and the International Court of Justice. Zurich is home to the FIFA headquarters, and Davos hosts the annual World Economic Forum. The Palais des Nations in Geneva was built for the League of Nations, the forerunner of the United Nations. Switzerland has truly become a platform for global issues. But if everything is now more or less clear with its diplomacy and neutral status, how can we explain its success in technology and finance? Again, let us return to geography. Switzerland is landlocked and has no significant resources such as coal, oil, or gas. Its land is not very fertile and its population is relatively small. With these limitations, the country could either remain on the periphery or develop technology and democratic institutions. Let's start with technology. Switzerland exports jewelry, pharmaceuticals, machinery, and even electricity. How has this been possible? The country has built more than 1,700 dams, ranging from small to gigantic. For example, the 285-meter-high Grand Dixons Dam is the largest in Europe and the 7th largest in the world. And the oldest concrete dam, built in 1872, is still in operation. Transportation is equally impressive. The 57-kilometer Gotthard Tunnel is one of the longest in the world. In all, Switzerland has more than 1,300 tunnels built using advanced technology. The country's first railway tunnel was built in the mid-19th century. This level of engineering excellence has been achieved thanks to a highly organized workforce and time-tested innovations. But what is the secret of this level of development? There is no single answer. Switzerland is an association of dozens of cantons, each of which has a high degree of autonomy. These are states within a state where free people live, and their freedom is manifested not only in political elections, but also in the ability to participate in government at all levels. Direct elections are the standard procedure in Switzerland. Residents vote on important issues several times a year. This practice ensures that any reform or major decision is the result of consensus. Switzerland is a country that, thanks to its unique approach to development and strict adherence to neutrality, has managed to become one of the most successful countries in the world. Direct elections, a strong banking system, advanced technology, and great attention to detail all contribute to its top rankings in happiness, innovation, and prosperity. Referendums are an example of democratic engagement. In 2022, the Swiss voted 11 times. For example, they discussed banning animal testing and tobacco advertising. This shows the extent to which citizens are involved even in issues that may seem minor. Their participation is the foundation of a free society where decisions are made collectively. Local innovation is also impressive. The country is the birthplace of companies such as Nestlé. In the 19th century, Henri Nestlé invented a milk formula that saved many children's lives. Another Swiss created the first solid milk chocolate, and Julius Maggi invented the bouillon cube. These products became global hits. These successes did not happen by chance. Switzerland relies on technology and entrepreneurship. Switzerland also attracts migrants who bring money and ideas. But life here is expensive. High salaries are accompanied by significant taxes, and housing and food prices often exceed world standards. For example, the famous Big Mac Index shows that it costs 2.5 times more in Switzerland than in neighboring countries. However, this high price is justified by the high standard of living and stability. The country continues to follow its principles: neutrality, security, and economic freedom. Even the new bridges on the borders are mined to protect against possible invasions. This approach shows not only prudence, but also a desire to maintain stability. Switzerland is an example of how perseverance, innovation, and democracy can build a prosperous society. Let its story be an inspiration to all those who strive for development and success. If you like the video, don't forget to like and share it. See you in the future.